In 1964, a totally unknown author named Hubert Selby published a novel which struck the seismic fault between post-war morality and the explosive beatnik era like a bombshell. Critics damned Last Exit to Brooklyn as the product of an obscene imagination, but for the young, it became the cult novel of a new age. Today, Last Exit to Brooklyn has lost none of its provocative dynamics. For Hollywood studio bosses, the book, especially filming it on location in Brooklyn, was too hot a potato to handle. It took the same duo which broke taboos with Christiana F., a portrait of childhood drug addiction, to finally create this costly picture of modern life and morality. For these two men, film producer Bernd Eichinger and film director Uli Edel, it meant 3 months of tough work.
Now listen, we know for a fact that they got a shipment due that our picketing is cut off, and it's killing them.
The film is set in the early 50s at a street corner in the Brooklyn docks, but the threads of fate binding its characters together form a web which could entangle us all. The harbor at Red Hook, Brooklyn is desolate today with its docks and factory halls rotting away, its cranes rusting. Once the place was alive with thousands of dock workers and with soldiers on their way to Korea, spending their last dollars in smoky bars on two-bit hookers. For them, Brooklyn was the gate to hell. But for the lost souls we meet again in the movie, it is a kind of home, which is never a home. In this clamoring hell of a harbor, Hubert Selby sought refuge from the middle-class morality of the McCarthy age, to subdue his rage over the fate of being spit out in the street, fatally ill at age 18. He dedicated his novel to all those who cannot find their way home, because Brooklyn is more than a place. Brooklyn is a part of all of us.
And action!
Uli Edel is staging the chase scene in a dark and threatening street that ends at the water, like all the streets in Red Hook. These few crucial seconds of film require the concentrated effort of an entire night. A gang that hangs out on the corner of 58th Street and 2nd Avenue beats up a soldier out of sheer boredom.
No, you have only to raise your leg like this. You know? Right. You're here. Do this. Right. Okay. Okay? Yes. Okay. Okay.
In the novel, this scene is preceded by a quote from Solomon's Song of Songs. Man is like the beast. As one dies, so dies the other. To avoid injury during shooting, each movement in these fight scenes is precisely choreographed. In the finished movie, they will look frighteningly authentic. A few neighborhood men come to the location a day after shooting this scene.
We got a chance to meet the guys, actually. They came down to the set in Brooklyn one night, 4 of them, and Cubby would never exactly specify who really was who.
Right.
When we attacked the That was really funny.
But the guys, when I actually met them, were very quiet, polite, almost warm, kind of like, worldly life experience type guys who, like, if you based on this movie, the characters that we're playing, you would totally think that that's not what they would have turned out to be. You would think that they would be like, alcoholics, like barflies and stuff like that. But the guys that we met just came in, like, I was like, this you're the guys? I was like, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you.
Yeah. That's all wood.
The way it was.
But you see all that shit that happened over there? Right from the beginning, like they started, fighting with soldiers and stuff. But when it first started, like the guys weren't even bothering with it. It was the soldiers that started that shit.
Well, you had all them goddamn...
Oh, yeah. Because I remember
down south.
the first fight I saw with soldiers was Mikey Policino. No, 3rd Avenue, 58th.
3rd Avenue.
Mikey Policino, a guy who wanted to fight, was only a kid.
The huge old barracks are used as warehouses today. We meet again a day later at the real corner of 58th Street and 2nd Avenue in Brooklyn, only blocks away from the shooting location.
They started all that stuff, you know.
You know what they did one night? We put 4 soldiers in the hospital. 82nd Airborne, right? They sent a Suburban, 4 MPs up after us. We took their bats up, put them in the hospital, put them back in their truck, and drove them back to the Army base. Then they got the CID after us. That's the FBI, the Army FBI.
Yeah.
They wanted to lock us up. They didn't get away with it, though.
I don't know, there was an argument with a soldier or something. Yes, they come outside the bar to fight. He put up his hand to fight. The guy kicked him in the balls. I mean, it was a shock, you know. We didn't know what the hell to do. We never saw anything like that. But that was the last time that thing happened, because later on in the night, we came back. You know, after this guy, he started to feel good. Then 2, 3 hours later, we came back, and we dragged the guy out of the bar. And, you know, he exacted his revenge, but, you know, you might say. But after that, nobody got kicked, you know, like if they did. Of course, it was in the heat of a riot of some kind, but they got back what they asked for. They started, and then the guys learned how to kick, and they kicked back.
They always hated the Yankees. Always hated the Yankees. Of course, they come here with the uniform. You know, but they found out they were wrong. And, you know, the word just kept spreading. And the more soldiers came, the more they figured numbers they're going to get us. They never could. As many as they were, they always got beat. Always got a beat. Of course, they thought they were in the war. They could carry rifles and they come back heroes, you know. But they were picking on kids because we were kids.
Yeah,
They still kicked the shit out of them. I walk in one night to come to work, and this big, huge Filipino, I mean big. I'm 150 pounds, right? He started in with me.
Expound on what he's saying.
Well, I hit him so many times, so fast and so hard, he went down, ripped my shirt off going down. And if I hadn't caught him by surprise, he would have killed me. But as it turned out, I beat him. And there was no more heavyweight champ in the fleet, and nobody gave me no more hard time. They used to come in the bar just like it was church. Never had no more problems after that. Well, I often wonder what happened to the guy I beat. Must have destroyed his career. It was pandemonium.
But this place was hopping from all afternoon, all night, and action every minute of the day.
It was full of...
All the time. And full of arguments and fights and, you know, not only fighting, but a lot of hooting and howling and enjoying themselves.
A lot of prostitutes.
There was a lot of girls
A lot of
around.
prostitutes around.
It's like movie house stuff, you know. You ever see things in a movie? A lot of girls hanging around and...
Forget you had all the seamen with a lot of money.
Yeah.
All the sailors, the young kids. You got the soldiers. A lot of girls around. A lot of them got married, too.
Oh,
the
yeah.
check.
They used to
Only
get a
for the
lot of
check.
money.
Married
sure.
to 10, 20 guys.
Right?
Brooklyn Bridge lies in the shadows of the awesome skyscrapers of downtown Manhattan. Only 100 years ago, its mighty neo-Gothic pillars dominated the New York skyline. For many New Yorkers, they still are the gate to another world. Thomas Wolfe, one of the many writers fascinated by the melancholy energy of Brooklyn, wrote, "Brooklyn, only the dead know Brooklyn." Henry Miller, who loved Brooklyn, called it a gigantic hole. To him, even the war did not wreak as much havoc as this social earthquake area, this melting pot into which wave upon wave of immigrants were thrown for over a century. Fire hydrants are often the only oasis in the burning heat and dusty air of this big city jungle. First settled as a Dutch colony in the 17th century in a sandy lagoon, Brooklyn still does justice to its original name, Breukelin, broken land, swamp, wasteland. There are 200 miles of shoreline between the water and the desolate streets where Scarface Al Capone once earned his nickname, and where today a few lonely figures seem to wait for nothing and dogs stray past dilapidated buildings. To Henry Miller, it seemed like an extinct volcano, as barren and desolate as the name of God in the mouth of a disbeliever. Here in Brooklyn, a man down by the harbor said, "You don't live, you survive." There are all the crack kitchens there. The mafia's there. There's a high crime rate there. And my production manager told me from the start that there is no way we could shoot in Red Hook. It's much too dangerous. Red Hook became more and more magical to me, and after no one wanted to drive me there, I finally found a taxi driver who would. I asked the cabbie why this area was so dangerous. He replied, "Because there is nobody on the street. So why couldn't we stop, get out, and take a few pictures?" And he answered, "Why the hell do you think there is nobody on the streets?" "Because it's so dangerous. I went ahead and took a few pictures anyway. The next morning, I called my production designer and told him, "Drive to Red Hook. That is our location." At noon, he returned, pale as a ghost, and said it was right there on the street leading directly to the water. The police were there. A body was lying there. The head was cut off. The arms were cut off, so it couldn't be identified. And that was our start. The production designer immediately said, "No way, I am not shooting there." And yet, that's where we shot the whole movie. An old factory in the middle of the docks serves as the set for staging those shocking events on the legendary street corner in Selby's book. Constructing the facades consumed over $1 million.
What happened was they took over a whole block area in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Took over it, lock, stock, fixtures, everything. It was so healthy. It was the sharpest way I've ever worked. We had no logistics problem, no people problem. The people were fine, they were decent. Everything was great.
A film set on the outside, this old revived factory serves as a gigantic production base on the inside, where 30 seamstresses are to sew over 2,000 costumes, and where furniture and props are made. An independent infrastructure has developed to ensure smooth shooting. The hectic activity inside the shops and offices provides an unusual contrast to the desolate street scenes a few blocks away. It is as if Manhattan has occupied a piece of Brooklyn for a few months.
Okay, thank you, bye. And they shot it. They didn't spare an inch. They went ahead. Very exciting. I'm very happy to be around this piece.
Soon, the vast asphalt swamp of the city will have swallowed all the traces. Then only the pictures on the screen will be left to remind us of the shooting in Brooklyn where Stephen Lane grew up as well. He portrays one of the film's main characters.
I play a character who has never been happy one day in his life, ever. And so when he finally gets happy, it's such an alien feeling that it's frightening to him. He doesn't know what to do with it at all. He's representative of the people in the dark corners who we don't really examine too much, and we pass them by. But Selby took the time to, shine a light on these people who live under rocks. And one of them's name is Harry Black. I guess that if you examined almost any one of them, you'd find something equally sad, comic, dramatic, tragic. But in Harry's case, you find a very particular, very individual story. And, it's a heartbreaking story to me.
The whole movie's a tough, gritty, angry piece, and very dangerously close to tragedy. And I think Big Joe and his family, to me, bring in humanity that we need in life, and I think with a piece. And I have a good time with her, and my wife and my children.
But as you can tell, this is a very, very lovely place. We used to come here quite often on Sundays. The whole family would pile in my grandparents' car and just drive all over the cemetery. It was like the family outing on Sunday. But by the time I was born, they had to drag me out. I must have known what was waiting for me because I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Yeah. What happened was the umbilical cord was wrapped around my throat, and I was choking. And later on, I got TB and asthma. All my life I've been struggling to breathe. So they finally dragged me screaming into the world. And they tell me when I was born, I had no ears, just hunks of stuff hanging down. And my head came to a point, and I was all black and blue from being bruised, and also blue from cyanosis, from lack of oxygen. And that started my life.
One of the book's chapters is the story of Georgette, one of those eccentric creatures you can still find amidst the subculture of Brooklyn's Harbor District. And Selby's attacks on zones of sexual taboo also still have the impact of electric shocks.
It's going on since 10 minutes.
Right. One. It's really a millimeter to me, you guys.
How can people like Georgie even survive in this world? They don't, says Selby. They perish. In this scene, Georgie, the transvestite, is the butt of a horrible joke. The actors on location, however, had a lot of fun shooting this hellish scene.
I think that I really had to have this very, very deep affection for Georgie because I identified with Georgie. And I didn't know it at the time, but looking back now, I've always felt alienated from everything and everyone. I always felt totally alienated. And I believe Georgie felt alienated. My feeling and identification with Georgie had a lot to do with my writing about Georgie, and a lot to do with my writing the book, because after I wrote Love's Labor's Lost, I don't know, a year or two later, someone told me that Georgie had been found dead of an OD in the street. And that moved me very much. And so I finished the story. I guess I felt Georgie needed more than some kind of an anonymous life and death. So I finished the story, and from that, the book evolved. There is something inside of me that's really hungry for what people call home. And it doesn't have anything to do, ultimately, with a house or a location. It just has to do, I believe, with being comfortable with yourself, within yourself. That's when you're really home.
Selby visited his mother in the hospital during shooting. It used to be, he said, I hated my parents. Once, when he came home drunk, as he often did, he even wanted to kill his mother. To him, home was a word to be feared.
Yeah.
I never had a pair.
Yeah.
I just liked it.
You can take a look at it down there. Can you get up?
Yep.
Selby has been living for years in West Hollywood, but the following night in his Midtown Manhattan hotel room, he writes an article entitled, "You Can Go Home Again," meaning not only Brooklyn, which he immortalized in his novel and which almost devoured him. For Selby, home is an existential place. He himself bitterly fought for the peace his heroes could not find.
I never had spy glasses, we used to call them as kids.
Yeah, so...
From here, using binoculars, you can look down to the harbor where a mass scene with hundreds of extras will be shot the next day. Within hours, this site is transformed into a turbulent departure scene. For a while, the Manhattan skyline on the other side of the East River seems forgotten. One feels transported to those years when soldiers were being shipped out to Korea. Director Uli Edel and producer Bernd Eichinger screened dozens of documentary films to recreate the scene as true to life as possible.
Okay, stop.
Jennifer Jason Leigh plays Tralala, a local hooker who, after a short affair with an Army officer, is thrown back into the miserable reality of 58th Street. For her, Manhattan, that grand promise beyond the river, has proven to be an illusion. Like all of Selby's heroes, Tralala is also destroyed by her own false dreams.
Every time I finished a section of that book, I would pass out at the typewriter. And I'd be out like maybe a couple of days. After I finished, I think it was Tralala, I was in bed for 2 weeks. I get very involved with these people. And I just hate to see them destroy themselves, you know, but they insist upon doing it. And I get very involved with them, and then when they finally find their the end, I'm wiped out.
The preparations for the climax of the film are running at top speed. Everyone is tense. The production base and the location outside are buzzing with hectic activity. A spectacular battle between striking dock workers and mounted police is to be shot within 5 nights. Recruited from nearby streets and neighborhoods, over 1,000 extras with their unique faces will add to the film's illusory effect. But first, they must be registered, costumed, and given haircuts. 40 barbers work non-stop, 10,000 hot meals, and 5 muggy nights later, they all will be exhausted. For the extras, the battle is a big struggle for recognition, for a second of celluloid, for a moment in the spotlight. For the director, producer, and crew, it is a struggle against the clock, a struggle against the sun which rises at 5 a.m. over the brackish waters of the Gowanus Canal, interrupting shooting for 17 hours. In the late 40s, America was rocked by the biggest wave of strikes in its history. Workers wanted a share of post-war prosperity. But taking alleged mafia infiltration as a pretext, the government rigorously suppressed the striking workers. Brooklyn's dock workers bore the brunt of these reprisals. Reliving the battle 40 years later, many of the extras still recall the severe conflicts with the police. Everything we achieved back then, one of them said, we achieved only through violence.
Yeah, because here. Just show me how high you can go. How much difference is there? Yeah, show me the difference. Okay, stop for a moment, Frankie. That's okay, you can do it in the last moment. It's better here to be lower, and then at the last moment we go up. So, wham!
Wenn man 1000 Leute 5 Nächte hat.
If you have 1,000 people for 5 nights, everything has to be coordinated down to the smallest detail. It is more a logistic problem, and I used extensive storyboards to prepare for it, precisely establishing each single shot in advance. Here you can see how they storm the gate, how they fall all over each other, how the police are trampled, how the scabs beat the inside of the gate with billy clubs, how single figures are hit, how a scab is almost torn apart, how water is deployed, and how the water then explodes in the strikers' faces.
Explodiert.
Do it flat. You know, nothing can happen here. Try not to hit those things. You know?
Hey! Come in order. And action! Coming in, guys, that's it. Hey, A group, A group, A group, B group, B group.
Right up here. Yeah, then we get these 3 cops here, you know? Okay. He and him.
To rehearse and shoot the fire hose sequence takes an entire night. 10,000 gallons of water gush across the dusty, sun-baked asphalt.
You hold it in there, and then I will tell you, move, you know? Then you go on this side.
At some point, there is a blackout in the nearby tenements. Unrest surges through the neighborhood. Cars are set on fire. The police give out a riot warning. Film shooting and the neighborhood reality mimic each other, as they often have in these months. Months which were not only a déjà vu experience for Hubert Selby, but also an intense adventure for everyone involved. If the viewer is willing to really take this path with us, then in the end, he will have an idea of happiness, an idea of hope.
See, I'm not concerned with the outcome. What happens, happens. And that's another thing. That's how we miss all of life, man. We think life is a dress rehearsal for life. We forget that this is it, you know? And the only time you can live is right now, right here. But we're always waiting. When I get this, when I get out of school, when I get X number of dollars a year, when I get this job, then I can. It never happens because it's always right now. So if you don't enjoy the trip, there's no place to go. There's a big difference between a dream and a vision. Everybody needs a vision, and to deny your vision is to sell your soul. But most people get involved in dreams, which is just purposeless fantasy, just escape mechanism, and that's not a vision. So dreams have to be destroyed and replaced by vision. And life has a way of doing it. Life will just beat it out of you.